just share my screen and let's wait a few minutes until everybody joins. And then let's get going. A lot of stuff to discuss, which is good because it keeps the stream more entertaining, of course, when we have things to discuss and when the market is moving. Luckily, it is moving today because it's been pretty quiet in the last few days. Specifically, the last 2 days, so Wednesday and Tuesday, it's been pretty boring. But it moved a bit today, which is good. Movement is always good. Doesn't matter in which direction. How you doing? Can you hear me, by the way? Didn't check at all. Double G. Yeah. Okay, you confirmed that. Perfect. Cartman. Let's wait 1 more minute before we get going so that people don't miss anything. So how was your day? How was your trading? Have you been able to catch anything on any direction? I think we've got pretty volatile movements since the weekend, right? Since that little dip that we got for Ethereum at 3,400 to today. Pretty big swing moves. I mean, depends on your perspective, of course, but not bad. Setting up to shorts, to be honest. Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Personally not interested in longs here. And I'm not really a breakout trader or a chaser. So I'm not really interested in longs around these levels. We will see why in a bit. But yeah, good that you're not euphoric to feel FOMO and to be looking for longs or fresh longs here. I think ETH going to around 3,800 and looking for good shorts. Yeah, we'll see in a bit. I think so. Followed your total 3, total 2, and total unit from Fridays and blocked all chat. Yeah, I appreciate that. That was pretty good, Rag, actually. To be super honest, I caught myself a bit too focused on lower time frame on Saturday. And then on Monday, when I opened my setup and looked at everything on higher time frames, I realized that we actually got the precise level for possibly every index, right? You're mentioning total 2 and total 3 and total USDT dominance. So that was pretty good, but I shouldn't be focusing too much on lower time frame, to be honest, when our big levels are coming. But good that you followed everything and that it played out for you. All right, let's get going, guys. I think whoever wanted to join already did, so we're already 4 minutes past. So I think we can get going slowly. Starting from BTC, not much changed, to be completely honest. We are still in this very, very small range between previous range lows and this 112 area, which got retested over the weekend. Pretty small, choppy range. So it is important to understand that we are in a range, right? Currently, currently facing these range lows here. So a bit of resistance for BTC. I would not necessarily be looking for any new longs here. I think this is 116, 500, 117, maybe even 118 areas, pretty big resistance zone. So, and ideally what you want to wait for swing longs is a clear flip of the zone, a retest at some point, some RSI resets here, and then you can look for longs. But as I said a bit earlier, not really interested in longs here at this resistance zone. I think this was a pretty good retest. We discussed this during the weekend, 112 to 108K. Pretty big zone. I do not exclude that this can get retested again in the next few days if this area here is not reclaimed. So this and this is very, very important. As long as we're below this, not really interested in new longs, especially not swing longs, potentially for shorts. For shorts, of course, always evaluating local triggers, right? 15-minute, 30-minute, very, very important. Ideally, I wanted a divergence here for BTC. Well, it doesn't look like we're getting it at this range lows here. So we'll see if we get that in the next few hours. Maybe something like this, and maybe something like this, and that's where I would be looking for shorts, not specifically on BTC, but potentially altcoins, because they're very weak. Altcoins are very weak. So I would even say that even if Bitcoin, let's say, makes a new high here, reclaims the zone and starts making a new high, get everyone bullish, and then comes down, we won't see new local highs for altcoins here. Ethereum, yes, because it's very strong due to the ETF inflows, but altcoins are very weak. So if we get a divergence here for Bitcoin in the next few hours, I will be looking to short some altcoins that also have lower time frame divergences. So this is my intraday view on BTC. As I said, this is resistance. If we ever come down to these zones, 108K, this is an area I've been waiting for a few weeks now. I don't know if we get it, but if we get it, then I think it's a pretty good zone to try some stuff. And we will try some stuff. Might buy some spot. I haven't bought much spot recently, to be honest, as you may have noticed. I don't buy spot that often. I only buy spot at big swing levels, and the last one we got was in April. And I started giving out official calls in May or something like that. So a bit unfortunate with the timing, right? If I had given out official calls starting from April, I think we would have caught some bangers officially, because if you've been around, you know that we caught pretty much the bottom of the crypto market and the stock market back then. But since then, more or less in an uptrend for stock markets and the crypto market. Obviously, the crypto market following stock markets, only natural for Bitcoin to follow that trajectory as well. But we will get our opportunities for swing trades. On super higher time frames, on the monthly, you know that we're also dealing with this monthly divergence. Now, I don't need to bring this up every day. Right, because it is not important for the intraday, for the intra-week, and it might confuse people, right? So if I say, for example, on lower time frames, Bitcoin is on support, and then I bring up this monthly 3 drive, it might, it might discourage some from taking a scalp from an obvious support level, right? But the scalp can work out and the 3 drive can work out. But what's the matter with the 3 drive is that this will take a lot of time play out, and we could even get a smaller push here for BTC to actually print a perfect 3 drive on the monthly, right? So we'll not bring this up many times, but always good to have this in your back head. I will bring this up if it starts playing out in a few months, say 6 months from now, end of Q4, something like that. Or if it gets invalidated, then it's worth discussing. Other than that, just know that I will not discuss this every day, but it is there, right? So you're informed about this, and that's why I want to focus more on the intraday or intra-week perspective for BTC, because that's more relevant for you right now. Because obviously, even if there are 3 drives, we're still in a bull market. There's a lot of opportunities that can be taken, right? So we gotta make sure that we make the most out of it. And just confusing people with these 3 drives is, I mean, it's good to inform them, right? I think you appreciate being aware about it, but it's not like something you want to discuss every day. I hope that makes sense. So BTC covered Ethereum. Really nice RSI reset that we had recently here. So we did have this daily divergence, right? Which was problematic at the key resistance zone, which led to a really nice drop on Ethereum, actually. Very quick, minus 15%, over 15%. Daily RSI partial reset at 50, 3,400, 3,300 was our scalp zone. Let's call it scalp zone, because swing zone would obviously be something like this here, right? But as long as we don't get the swing zone, we can play scalps easily. Now we're getting back to this this 4K area, and yes, we tagged it many times, of course. So one's intuition would be the more we test it, the more likely it is to break. But do we need to make that bet? I personally don't. My system doesn't allow to make that bet. My system would say we wait for a clean reclaim of the zone, maybe a breakout to whatever level. Let that even be 4,700, doesn't matter, right? And then we buy at a retest a few weeks later. No need to necessarily try and catch that. So what's happening on more higher time frames here? This is interesting to monitor. 4K area, 3-day chart. Now this wouldn't be a 3-day bearish divergence. If we had something like this, like a pull back to the zone, maybe some chop, and then come back here, and then print something like this, that would be more of a concern. But this is not a 3-day. Yeah, I mean a tight one here, very tight one here. I don't know if you can see it. But these are not the divergences I really like. They're very tight, so a bit conflicted about this one. But still, 4K is big resistance. I'm not really interested in buying here. Actually, I might even be interested in taking a short on ETH. I'm not in an ETH short yet. I think somebody asked me because I'm very picky with my entries, guys. I mean, I don't trade every day. I might go a week without any trade at all, right? That's just my approach to the market. And what I'm waiting here on more lower time frames. I mean, if you're already short, that's fine. I always look for a bit more confluences. That also means that I miss a lot of trades because I don't always get these divergences, right? Sometimes the market just gives me a sneaky higher low and I don't get the divergence at all. Well, that's fine because this system has worked for me. What I wanted to show you though on ETH is what I'm trying to look at in the next few hours. So obviously 4K area resistance, just because it is a resistance zone does not necessarily mean we short, right? We always look for lower time frame triggers. If you remember the short on SUI that we discussed, I would love to say I took it, but I got stop break even. But that we discussed under fundamentals, we did have a daily bearish divergence, right? For SUI here. But catching such a daily bearish divergence, what is this chart? Oh my god. Catching a daily bearish divergence is very difficult, right? Because the price can pump 5, 6, 7% and still have a daily bearish divergence, right? So it's always good to zoom in a bit and then look for more lower time frame triggers for a short. In this case, we had a 30-minute divergence here. And that's basically what I'm looking for ETH as well. If I don't get it, that's fine. The directional bias would confirm to be correct. But for a leverage position, my system usually looks for divergences, especially around POC levels. I was just going through the chat. So what I would be looking here is, well, the thing with what people do after explosive moves is that they instantly look for a trade when the market is pumping or when the market is dropping, right? Yes, that can be good if you catch something on a wick, right? That's absolutely fine. My approach is to let price action develop, because only when we get real flushes we see a V reversal, right? But we're not. This is not a flush, or this is not like a rip. This is not a flush. You know what I mean? This is like a slow grind up. So when there's a slow grind up, I want to make sure I have local triggers. So what I'm looking at is something like this, and then something like this on the RSI, and then potentially a divergence on the OBV as well. and then you have confluence from the price via POC levels, the RSI, and the OBV. And I mean, if you can use all kinds of indexes like MACD if you see a bearish crossing here, right? So this blue line doing this, and then this red line doing this. That would be an additional confluence if you get triggers from this. You don't need to overcomplicate it, right? I'm just giving you several options, several potential indicators that you can use. I think at the end of the day, price with POCs and RSI is all you need. If you want to add some additional confluence to that, you can use volume as well to see if volume is fading as well. Usually RSI and OBV go hand in hand, but it's not always the case. But when you have a divergence on RSI and OBV, then that's double confluence, right? So this is what I would be looking at, maybe even a test of this zone and then this here. But I'm not in a short yet. But if I get this, I'll try this POC here at 3,878. But it is very important to get the divergence, right? Because price can just do this, and then the next 30-minute candle can just go up, and you'll get instantly stopped, right? So it's always good to wait for the 30-minute close, see if you get a divergence, and then enter a trade. So this is Ethereum both on higher time frames as well as lower time frames. Bitcoin we covered as well. So why is the market pumping? That's not completely accidental, right? We talked about the dollar in the last few days and weeks. Where's the dollar? Oh, here it is. And it's been weak in the last few hours, I would say, because okay, let's get rid of this. This is not important. Because it did have a perfect bearish retest of this 100 area here. Very, very clean. We said that if this level here is reclaimed, then it would be quite negative for speculative assets because the dollar would move back into this year-long range, right? So when the range is reclaimed, then investors usually can speculate that range highs can be retested, right? And if there's the possibility of the dollar rising this much, then it de-incentivizes investors to keep their exposure towards assets like stocks or crypto. And when the dollar started showing some strength here from our range low specifically, this is when people started to be a bit worried, right? Because a lot of stuff was being overpriced. If we consider technical analysis, like we did have a daily bearish divergence on ETH, for example, right? But as soon as we got this rejection here, we got a bounce on both stock markets and the crypto market, right? So it just tells you how much dependent or correlated these charts are. And obviously it makes a lot of sense, right? Because when you get a bearish retest here, you want to position accordingly to hedge yourself against the devaluation of the dollar, right? And conveniently, this came with some data that favored this rejection on the dollar as well, which was job numbers last week, which suggested that the economy is slowing down and which increased the possibility of rate cuts in September. Now the probability of a rate cut in September is about 90%, so it seems like it's almost guaranteed that we will get another rate cut. Market is pricing in 2 rate cuts for this year, one for September, one for October. We talked with Rego yesterday on stream that whether we get a 25 BPS rate cut or a 50 BPS rate cut in September depends on the incoming inflation data, especially PPI and CPI that will be released next week. My thesis is still on higher time frames that the dollar has bottomed in July. Of course, Trump wants a cheap dollar, But I personally still don't see the scenario where the dollar would do something like this when all of this was pricing in a recession, pricing in rate cuts from the Federal Reserve. What I personally would speculate could happen in the next few weeks, specifically next month, is something very, very similar to last year. So here, all of this was the market speculating rate cuts are coming, right? Of course, the move was smaller compared to this because here we didn't have tariffs yet, right? That's a new element that got added here on top of the speculation for more rate cuts. But on the day or on the week that rate cuts got announced, specifically here, the dollar bottomed, right? And rose by 10%. Now, this did not instantly top the crypto market because the market basically rose on speculations about a Bitcoin strategic reserve that would supposedly be implemented in January, February, when Trump was appointed. And look when the dollar topped. January 21st, 20th, somewhere around the inauguration day, right? So I would expect something very similar for the dollar in the next few days and weeks, maybe something like this. Then rate cuts are announced. 25 BPS, 50 BPS, doesn't matter. We did get a 50 BPS rate cut here. And that's when the dollar bottomed, right? Now, what I still do believe is that when the dollar finds a bottom here, that will not instantly lead to the top of the cycle or for Bitcoin. But I do eventually think that the dollar bottoming here could have a delayed impact on the crypto market and that we could actually find some form of top by the end of this year. And that investors will look to rotate back into a cheap dollar and eventually ride it up towards mid-range or range highs. That, of course, depends on many, many other things, right? Like monetary policy around the globe. And it will also depend on what the Federal Reserve will do in terms of monetary policy. Because a single rate cut is not necessarily easing, right? It's just making it a bit easier to borrow money. Yes, it improves access to money, but there are way, way harsher ways of easing. And we've talked about them many, many times. So higher time frame and lower time frame should be pretty clear. What I'm a bit concerned about, well, not really concerned, but what I'm monitoring is a potential reaction from the dollar around these levels here. Let me just get rid of this and this. So these lows from 98 to 97.5. We will need to see if we get a reaction here because the market is running into resistance. And the market was running into support when the dollar was running into resistance. Now the market is running into resistance when the dollar is running into support. Now whether that's 98 or 97.8 or 97.5 doesn't really matter, but this will be very important here. If we get a nice reaction from this zone, and let's say this holds, and we get another push here, then this will be key, right? This whole area will be key to speculative assets. So very, very important to keep the dollar in your radar. If you, let's say, see bearish divergences on the dollar or the dollar going into resistance zone and you see the crypto market going into support zones, that's in many cases a good confluence to look for new long exposure, right? While when you see the dollar going into support zones and printing lower time frame bullish divergences, while the crypto market is running into resistance, it's always a good signal to be taking some profits or potentially even position short, just like we have discussed with Ethereum, right? So this way you can more or less predict, of course, as a confluence, right? Because there are other indicators that you can use as well, and you can sort of predict what the market is going to do next. So good that we discussed this both on lower time frames as well as on higher time frames. Sometimes it may be a bit confusing, right? Because I can say, On the weekly, I expect the dollar to go up, but on the 4 hour, I expect the dollar to go down. But I guess you understand the difference, right? They can both be right? The 4 hour can play out and the weekly can play out. It's just the difference between higher time frame and lower time frame. So this is something worth monitoring. Won't rate cuts weaken the dollar? Theoretically, yes. Theoretically, yes, but as what I just discussed with the market pricing everything in beforehand, I think there's a good chance that we bounce when rate cuts are announced. And that's only logical, right? Because when there's anticipation of rate cuts happening a month from now or 2 months from now, what people do is that they enter short positions on the dollar. And that adds to the sell pressure, right? And once the main catalyst for these short positions is done or close to be done, what happens then is that all these short positions or a lot of them close, and that leads to a reversal in the price. It's very similar to the crypto market, right? When you expect something like, let's say there's an upgrade on Ethereum and people enter Ethereum beforehand, it starts pumping, a lot of open interest accumulates. Then when the update happens, these long positions close, right? And we get a flush or a correction on the asset. And it's very similar for the dollar. But we will see. We will see how this plays out. This is just my theory, my educated guess on the dollar. I do expect, though, that we reach some form of top this year. And a lot of it will have to do with the dollar. All right, that's enough from the macro side of things. We don't have to cover more about this. Let me just go over the chat, see if there's any comments, any questions. As per usual, if you have questions, please tag me, because otherwise, I don't know if you're talking to anyone else in the chat or with me. Yeah, but in 1-2 years at all-time lows again for the DXY, all-time lows. Oh, you mean this? Ooh. Okay, I don't see any questions, so let's just get going. All right, so why am I saying that the market is running into some form of resistance? I mean, we already discussed it with Bitcoin and with Ethereum, right? So that should be clear, and it's clear resistance. But even if you look at some indexes, it's quite apparent, I would say. For others, for example, the mid caps index, we talked about this bear flag. It's still intact. It's not been invalidated yet. This is a 3-day chart. So it would take a lot of effort for this to be invalidated. I still believe on higher time frames, maybe next week, maybe tomorrow, I don't know, I don't care. But I still believe that this 250, 240 billion area is an area of value for mid caps. If it comes in the next in the near term, midterm, doesn't really matter. But this is a resistance zone for me, for others. And why this is a bit problematic, if let's say get this and drop, is because we start forming some form of structure, right? Which is a high and a lower high. And then it becomes even more possible that we get a lower low at some point. And of course, this will depend a lot on Bitcoin. This will depend a lot on BTCD and Ethereum, ETH BTC. But judging this purely from the TA side of things, to me, this is still a resistance zone which needs to be reclaimed, and then we can talk about higher levels in the market. Very similar situation with all other indexes, to be honest. Total 2, our macro resistance zone was, I would say, perfect, right? We got an instant, not an instant, but we did get a rejection. Took a few days to play out, of course. It usually does. Look at this here. Look at this here. It's not immediately obvious that we're rejecting from that zone, right? And of course, there's always a lot of bullish sentiment here, a lot of bearish sentiment here when we try to bottom, which is why it's always good to have these discussions, in my view. Now here, a very similar situation compared to others. We did get a nice rejection for total 2, a nice 15% drop. Our first zone of interest was 1.35 to 1.32, a scope level based on these lows here. We got a really nice retest of that zone. I'm saying scalp because a swing zone for me would be this. And now you're saying, yes, of course, DB, but this would also become this, right? I'm not so sure about that because first we got some resistance around here and we got some higher time frame divergences that could form. First of all, if we print a lower high, just like with others, I don't think that would be super bullish, right? Because we would be in a situation where we have a series of higher lows, and then we could potentially even, not instantly, but go for a lower low at some point. And my big zone of interest remains here, absolutely, 1.25, 1.26. If we ever get that, I think that would be a really nice one for buying. And then we would be looking for some TP areas. Maybe not swing. Maybe it would be a scalp again. It will depend on local triggers. But here, resistance. Say we clear this up, right? And we go for this again. We can literally print a 3-day bearish divergence here. Say you don't want to complicate it with divergences, you can make it very simple. Green zone is resistance, right? Flip above it. Let's say, I would say maybe close to daily above this high here. Here, you'll get a breakout and you will be able to buy here again. It's buying higher, but it doesn't matter. It's not about whether you're buying cheap or expensive. Of course, it's nice to buy cheap, absolutely. But in this case, it is about buying with the right invalidation, right? And buying here under resistance, give or take, right? 1.55, 1.50, does it really matter? It doesn't really matter, right? But close to a higher time frame resistance, what would be your invalidation? If you buy here, maybe your invalidation would be 9% on total 2, and that's way too much. Whereas here, if you buy here, your invalidation is very easy, which would be basically daily acceptance below this level, right? So I think you get the point. Total 3 looks very similar. Very similar. Also reached our zone over the weekend. This was actually clearer, way clearer, because it was a clear test of May highs. Very beautiful, and really glad that some of you caught it. But here as well, potential resistance where another lower high can be printed. If we get a lower high here, right? Or if we get a 3-day divergence here, something like this. This is not something to fade. And if we do get this, I don't expect this zone to hold a second time. I think if we do get this, maybe we see something like this. So long story short, this was for buying. This is for observing local triggers and potentially take some profits. I would be very surprised if this actually turns out to be a swing zone. If it does, even better for whoever followed it. But I do think there's a possibility that we get a rejection from these zones here, because we see it with every other index, others as well, total 2 as well. And total market cap maybe around these levels here. If we get a rejection from total market cap as well, here, it was also a nice retest. Really good. But if we get a lower high and say Bitcoin rejects on that area we discussed, right? It's not able to reclaim that zone. And we get a lower high on total market cap as well, then my zone of interest would be here, 3.5 to 3.45 trillion. And yeah, I hate to bring it up, but you know the drill with the monthly. Actually, this one got also picked up by the Woods bot. This monthly bearish divergence. Now, of course, nothing super relevant on lower time frames. You'll still be able to trade, of course, right? But it is a monthly div, so something worth considering. You could even argue that it is a 3 drive. We talked about it. Not a perfect one, but it is one. But let's say it's not a 3 drive. You don't categorize it as a 3 drive. We do have a regular monthly divergence. Picked up by the bot as well. Do I have it here? No. By the Woods bot. Right? This is Pockets indicator. Yeah, my bad. Alright, so pretty clear. So in my view, what should I say? Is it time to be euphoric? Absolutely not. I think the time to be euphoric was here last weekend. The time to be euphoric will be here again if we get it. Why wouldn't we get it? September is coming up, which has been historically a relatively bad month for stock markets, so I could see this happening as well. You get excited here, you get excited here. You only get excited here because you took profits and you're excited about your profits, or you want to take shorts, right? This is not an area you want to be buying. If at all, you wait for a reclaim of this zone, new all-time high, price discovery, perfect. You will get a retest at some point to buy here again, or maybe if you want to risk it, if you have exposure from here, you're saying I'm going to risk it all and see maybe I can catch a swing. That's up to you, of course. What I would personally do if I would have bought here, I'm only long on Ethereum, but closed most of the position. But if I had more exposure, what I would personally be doing is that I would sell 50-60% of my purchases made over the weekend and then hold the rest for a potential reclaim or an extension of this move, which will depend a lot on the dollar as well, right? So remember, this will depend on the dollar and the Bitcoin will depend on the dollar. But if we get lower highs here, I don't think it would be super nice. So we'll see. Even USDT dominance with a potential higher low. We also caught this really nicely. Too bad we didn't get a 12-hour divergence here because the market did a sneaky higher low with Bitcoin, but we did catch this one, 4.50 to 4.60 area, really clean. We waited for this level, I would say 2 weeks at least, right? Since we saw this bullish divergence here. The moment we saw this, we said this is gonna reset at some point. And it did reset. Look at this. Reached 12-hour overbought. Nevertheless, also coming very close to a support zone. Just as the total charts are coming close to those resistance areas, right? So if you do get those lower highs on the indexes that we discussed and then a higher low here, would probably look for something higher above. It's about triggers, guys, right? It's not about trying to predict the market. And we will always evaluate local triggers, of course. Did you sell spot bags again as well? I didn't have spot bags apart from stocks, to be honest. I did have some longs. As I said, I was in ETH, still partially in it, like 20, 30% in the trade because I'm waiting for this divergence to form to fully close. But I did take a lot of profits from stock purchases that I made in April. Oh, look at this S&P 500 nuking and crypto is pumping. I don't know if you've been in the group in April, Trader M, but I did buy a lot of stocks here. Sold along the way up and sold a lot in the last few weeks. Not because I don't think that stocks won't be going up, but I was very, very happy with the profits. And if you get a 33% move on the S&P 500 in 2 months and you don't pay yourself, I mean, it's not reasonable, right? So yes, if that's your question, yes, I did take a lot of profits recently, and I would love to see a September dip towards this zone here. This would be really nice. And obviously, crypto has been strong because this has been strong, right? It's not the other way around. It's not the S&P 500 following crypto. It's crypto following the S&P 500. When the S&P 500 is strong and Bitcoin is strong, ETF inflows will be higher. ETF inflows were very, very low, even negative throughout this drop here. Because this is retail trading, guys. It's not like only Warren Buffett trading this, you know what I mean? Of course, it's a lot of hedge funds, absolutely, no doubt about that. But a lot of this behavior is also retail, right? So 32% increase on the S&P 500, which dragged the crypto market up as well. Of course, lots of it has to do with liquidity in the markets, absolutely, but also with sentiment, right? We did get a weekly oversold area here. Basically, a whole recession being priced in here. So what more can come to actually cause panic in the market? And that's why we're pumping. But remember that once stock markets give us a nice pullback, and they will, right? Because no chart goes up only. I think crypto will give a pullback as well. Would love this retest of the zone sometime in the next few weeks. I think it's absolutely possible and will depend a lot, again, on the dollar. So we know the target for others on USD. Obviously, we hit the previous target. I don't have an area of interest for USD dominance yet, and that's completely fine. I mean, the only area of interest I would have, as I said, would be the support zone here, around these levels approximately, and POC confluence as well. But I don't have, let's say, a macro resistance zone because I would need some price action to develop, and I would need to see if we ever get this retest again, how USDT dominance behaves, right? And then we can come up with some levels, potentially even this 5% area here. But I think it's too early to say that, right? It doesn't make any sense for me to say why 5% is possible on USDT dominance when we're trading here. So we focus on more lower time frame and then we see what we get. Sometimes it's just the case that you let some price action develop and the price action educates you, right? I mean, especially when you gain more experience trading, price action is the best teacher to your system because it will allow you to see what patterns are emerging, what levels are being reached, what levels are being lost or reclaimed, what the RSI is doing, and the picture becomes more and more perfect. So we'll see about USDT dominance. First, let's see. I would love to take this out here. 4.25, 4.29. Would love to take this out. And then in confluence with the levels we discussed, others maybe an extension to 290 billion. Then what did we have for the other ones? Yeah, like total 2, right? This can still extend to 1.49, for example. Right, so there's still a bit of room to go higher, total 3 as well. I mean, this is a bigger zone, right? But we will always evaluate local triggers here. So I would love to take these out, to be honest, a little more up, form some divergences, and then have a confluence for taking a short. I don't know if you discussed this because I got here late, but what do you think about Trump and his plans to allow alt investments into? Personally, I think it's bullish for crypto and real estate. I don't know. I mean, obviously ETFs, crypto being added to these retirement funds, it's positive, right? We cannot say it's negative, absolutely, because it's an issue of liquidity, guys, right? Like, of course, liquidity comes from central banks, but liquidity comes also from private investors, right? And having a completely new channel of liquidity like ETFs or these retirement funds, it's absolutely a positive. But does that mean that we will necessarily just keep pumping? Not sure. I tend to follow more the price action, right? Because the crypto market will keep moving in cycles and in waves, and it will keep respecting resistance and support zones. It's not like, crypto is added to a retirement fund and we just get this, straight line up. This is never going to happen. You know what I mean? So yeah, positive, but it's not like something I just use as confluence to just keep buying and buying and buying, right? And yeah, positive news around resistance areas. You know what I mean? Negative news around bottom areas is also a thing to consider, right? Yeah, traders react. They don't predict. We can have a rough estimation, a rough prediction, right? But I cannot say, for example, I want alarm. Great. I cannot say. What is this? Total 3 is at this level, and it will reach this level at some point. I can say, well, there's an obvious resistance zone for total 3 here. If it reclaims this area, then it is possible that it goes for this level here, right? And you can basically make some form of prediction from level to level. But I think like more long term, it's always tricky because it always depends on local triggers. It always depends on macro developments, on any FUD event that may arise. Right, like we got this, for example, because of the war between Israel and Iran. Who could have predicted that? I mean, yeah, you get what I mean. Not completely surprising, but who could have predicted that it's happening right here? At 10 to 15 years from now, I mean, I think the future of Bitcoin is quite positive, right? I mean, mathematically, it is already designed to have incremental growth over an extended period of time, right? It especially around its supply dynamics, it's very intriguing. Less and less supply every halving cycle, and then you have currencies that basically devaluate over time, right? And that's basically why a stock market like the S&P 500 or Nasdaq has been increasing for the past decades, right? Basically, I mean, there's no top for the S&P 500. The only top for the S&P 500 would be the United States ceasing to exist as a country. So yeah, I mean, in that regard, I do see Bitcoin doing well in the next 10 to 15 years, unless like there's some revolution in quantum computing, something around that area that's completely something different. But mathematically speaking, and from an investment standpoint, this being added to a retirement fund, I think it's positive long term, right? But I'm still a believer of financial cycles. I still do believe that once global financial markets go into a bear market, Bitcoin will be affected as well, right? And it can then follow financial markets as well, and at some point drop. That's absolutely possible. So I would rather buy it in a bear market than in the middle or towards the end of the bull market. Good evening, DB. You've probably discussed this before, but I got a question. What do you think about the probability sell the news or otherwise consider news? Yeah, it is possible, right? It's absolutely possible. And once the news dropped, the market basically grew into resistance. And what also needs to be understood is that this takes a lot of time to be implemented, right? Like a few months, maybe even a year. So it's not like they will start buying instantly. So yeah, I could absolutely see it being a sell the news event because the market is growing into resistance, as I said. Okay, no more questions. Yeah, so this is it. What's Bitcoin doing? Let's see. Yeah, you see why it's always good to let some price action develop, right? So we could now get this here, something like this, something like this. And that's a better setup to take, in my view. I mean, there's no POC, so would probably not be super interested in BTC. Maybe check some alts if they're printing some divergences and take those. But it's always good to let some price action develop. But yeah, regardless of that, I think we're approaching very big resistance zones on higher time frames now. 2 or 3% higher than this is completely irrelevant to me. But something to consider and not necessarily to FOMO in. Let's see what I mean. I could almost guess that open interest is also increasing. Yeah, this is nuts. No, you don't want to buy into this. You don't want to buy into this. How do I get rid of this? This? No. Help. This? Yeah, perfect. You don't want to buy into this. You don't want to buy into open interest accumulating. You want to buy into a flush of open interest because you're a smart investor, right? You don't ape into positions, into long positions. So something worth noting. There's a 3 drive on ETH 3 day. I think I looked at this, but it wasn't super clean. Let's check. Uh, Tricky, very tricky. I mean, yeah, RSI, not a very clean one, but yeah, I see what you mean. I wish it was a bit wider than this, but yeah. What is the indicator saying? Nothing. Oh, or I don't really use this indicator much, but sometimes just as confluence because it reads divergences a bit different than I do. But on the greater scheme of things, as I said, open interest accumulating a lot, quite a lot. Look at this. Still a lot of borrowed money in the market. So I'm not super interested in buying Ethereum here. Drunk speed drive, yeah. I hate it when they're so cheeky, right? I mean, sometimes they're like picture perfect divergences that are like very clear, right? So let's take this as an example. And where's the daily? Where's the daily? Oh, this is a 3-day. Here, for instance, look, this is a perfect divergence, man. Look at this. First peak, bounce, leave some space in between. You always need the vacuum for the divergence. No vacuum, no divergence. I hate it when it's like everything attached, you know? That's not a real divergence for me. You need some vacuum in between. And then look at this. This is picture perfect. And then look how it played out. Almost fully reset the divergence. You know what I mean? And when it's like super tight, let's say the next candle is here, and it's super tight. I don't know. I like them. I like the divergences a bit wider. Yeah, the price on the RSI. Yeah. On ETH, last swing low was a great. Yeah, I think I did long that one. Not entirely sure. Let's see. I think 3,400. You got a. Oh, this is USDT dominance. 3,400. We really got a nice divergence. I think I did long that one. Yeah. I got it wrong. Yeah, this is good. I don't know if you're referring to this one. There even was a POC here. I think there was a POC at 3,358, and I did place a limit on that one, anticipating a divergence. And look at this. Got a nice vacuum here, little space, very clean divergence, and a higher time frame zone of interest. So yeah, similar here. This can shape up nicely here. Look for ETH. Got POC levels. We got the divergence, and we got the vacuum. So I might be taking this at 3,878, and then I mean it depends what the invalidation you want to have. But I will first wait for a 30-minute close here, or might even try placing a limit here. I'll see. I'll update on the fundamentals. We got one more minute, guys. So don't want to take anyone's time after the stream. I don't see any other question in the chat. So I hope this was helpful. We discussed a lot of higher time frame and lower time frame stuff. Don't be confused by the higher time frame stuff, right? It takes a lot of time to play out. It may take 2 or 3 months to play out. Focus on the lower time frame. Keep trading. There are a lot of opportunities in the market every day, right? Just because there might be something brewing up on more higher time frames doesn't mean that you cannot take advantage of all the opportunities that this bull market is giving us. Certainly do. Never FOMO. If you feel FOMO, that's completely fine. Sometimes I gotta admit I also feel FOMO, but I've learned over the years not to take any action upon it, right? To just ignore it, shut down my setup, and then wait for opportunities, because the opportunities come every day, every week. That's why this is the greatest market we ever have. So I hope this is helpful, guys. If you have more questions, let me know in the fundamentals. I'll be there as per usual, and just feel free to tag me. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Stay safe trading, and take care, everyone.